Hello, hello. Welcome to the premiere first GD show, That GD Show. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is Genevieve. Say hi, Genevieve.
Hey, everybody.
I'm Dave Warnock, and we are so glad we've been, oh God, it seems like all summer we've been planning on this, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. This has been in the work for months, and it's so exciting to finally have it here. And
yes. And we're so glad you guys are here. We've got a special guest we're going to bring on in a minute, but first we're kind of going to give you a little bit of a preview or an update, or just kind of share what this show's about. That GD Show, you can figure out what it means, Genevieve and Dave, and there's
nothing else.
Nothing else. Don't read anything else into that.
Yeah.
And I think the tagline we came up with is talking about issues and ideas that affect us all. And one thing that we decided when we started talking about this show is we just don't want it to be another show about atheism and Christianity or faith and secularity. There's a lot of shows that do that really well, and we don't want to reproduce that. We wanted it to be a little bit different. And so what do we talk about, Genevieve, that we kind of want to do differently?
Well, I think that something that's so great is that, as Dave mentioned, we've got a special guest coming up now, and we've got a bunch of special guests lined up for the coming months. And they're not always going to be those people who are in that atheist, agnostic, secular community. Luckily, because we're keeping it so broad, we can really branch out to talk about lots of things that affect us, even outside of religion. And perhaps it'll tie back into how religion affects that. But I'm just excited to take this approach and go on this journey with you, Dave.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I met Genevieve on TikTok, and so I saw some of her content, and I was just so impressed with how the clarity and the way that she communicated her ideas. And so I just reached out to her and I said, let's do a show together, because you got the grumpy old white dude and the young, sharp young woman. And so, I thought, this would be an interesting contrast. Most of you probably know my story. I was a longtime evangelical Christian, many of those years as a minister in pastoral ministry, and then deconstructed that about 10, 12 years ago, and have identified as an atheist for those 10 or so years. And then a couple of years ago, I got diagnosed with ALS, which is a terminal illness with no treatment and no cure. And I started doing a thing called Dying Out Loud. And many of you know me through that work. I've been on a lot of podcasts and YouTube shows, and co-hosted the Atheist Experience and a lot of the other shows like that. And traveled around, did a lot of speaking at secular events until COVID shut that down. But that's kind of my backstory. Genevieve, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Probably none of you will know me. Hello. Once again, I'm Genevieve. It's interesting. I focus a lot on the evangelical culture, and specifically sort of right-wing evangelicalism in America, but I have no Christian background. I was raised in my own sort of secular bubble. I grew up in San Francisco. I would go to the Science Museum every weekend. I wanted to be a paleontologist or an evolutionary biologist when I was 4. And it was as an adult that I moved to the Bible Belt, and that really shifted my perspective on things. When I was a kid and like a teenager, and I first, interacted with diehard Christians for the first time, I had moved away from San Francisco, and not to the Bible Belt, but to a place where that culture was more prevalent. And at first, I kind of just laughed it off. I was like, wait, you actually think there's a man in the sky? Like, you idiot. And moving to the Bible Belt, I realized that, wow, like this belief and a lot of the more extreme beliefs that go with it are way more common than I thought. And not just that, but faith is something that's very important to people. And it's silly to just sort of write it off, if that makes sense. So I tamed my angsty, sky daddy mocking, atheist self and started taking a little more of a different approach where I genuinely just wanted to understand the people around me and hopefully have some good dialogue. And really, I just think that's what life's about, is just understanding other people. So
yeah, and I found that fascinating when we first discussed that, because you had no dog in the hunt like me. You didn't come from that evangelical world. You didn't see the damage done. You didn't suffer the trauma from it that so many people I know experienced. And yet you wanted to learn about it because you saw what it was doing to the culture around us. You were in North Carolina at the time doing politics, and you saw how that affected everyday life, how people, the whole mindset of this, the folks that want to make this a Christian nation, Christian nationalism, and the surge toward that in this country, and the lid that was pulled off of that when Trump got elected. And you did a deep dive into it. You started devouring Bart Ehrman books and you jumped feet first into the shit show that many of us had been waiting in for years. And I found it fascinating that you wanted to lend your voice to that conversation. And I was pretty impressed by that. I am pretty impressed by that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think, the craziest thing was, like I said, growing up in a bubble, I just thought it was like this fringe group of people who, doubted evolution or things like that. Or people who, didn't support gay marriage or voted for Bush or Trump. Like, I thought these must have just been like some radical, crazy people. And I realized, like, no, those are my friends, my loved ones, my in-laws. And so I just kind of wondered, like, what's going on here? And I realized that I couldn't understand their perspective unless I understood their religion.
And these people vote, and these people run for office, and what they believe matters, and what you believe makes a difference. And so it's important. We can't just stick our head in the sand and wish it would go away. We can't run from it. We've got to engage. We've got to take them on, so to speak. And we've got to have these conversations. It's important. And that leads us to who we have on today. By the way, call. We have lines open. 217-375-9933. That stands for WWDD. What would Dave do? Call in, talk to us about anything, ask any questions. You're going to want to talk to this guest. By the way, hit the like and subscribe button. Let's get those algorithms up and so on and so forth. You know how that works. So when Genevieve and I started talking about this show and having guests, she said, I have one request. I want our first guest to be this guy. And so I said, sure, let me reach out. Because Anthony, I got to know Anthony a couple years ago. And so I want us to give a warm welcome to a good guy, a good friend of mine, Anthony Magnabosco.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me on your show. So exciting to be here. What a great kickoff. You got the best guest for the start. No, I'm just kidding.
We did. And Genevieve, I'm not kidding about that. She said, I want Anthony on. I
still find that hard to believe, honestly.
Well, tell us why, Genevieve. Tell us why.
I'm kind of curious. Like, my TikToks suck. What are you talking about? What are you seeing?
Well, I didn't find you on TikTok, and I didn't join TikTok until 2 weeks before Dave found me. But like I was just saying, I moved to the Bible Belt and I started having these conversations and realizing that, it's everyday people that I know and love who maybe distrust scientists when it comes to evolution or climate change. And, this was at the beginning of the pandemic. And I realized, I noticed this trend where it's like, okay, if you don't trust scientists about evolution, why would you trust them about, masks or vaccines or anything else? And so I started this, deep dive into trying to understand Christianity. I started, checking out the Bible. I watched a lot of Apologia, and then I found your channel. And I think I've watched most all of your videos, I think. And what I really appreciated was, you could have it seemed like it was the most fruitful conversations that I had found, because I think so often people, regardless of where they stand, they can be really combative, and it's a lot of finger wagging and sort of like Twitter feuding of, no, you're wrong and this is why. And I feel like when I found you in Street Epistemology, and when I bought, Pete Boghossian's book, Manual for Creating Atheists, I read that last summer. And I think that the best thing about your approach is how everybody who I've seen you talk to, by the end of it, regardless of whether or not you've changed their point of view, you've made them think, and they seem grateful, and they feel heard and respected. And I just think that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's kind of the goal of SE, really, and it's just a tool that I discovered early on. So I kind of sort of was in a position to ride the wave of that up. And like you were mentioning about the goal of your show, it's not just necessarily about religion or God beliefs, or maybe even necessarily supernatural claims. And that's one thing that we're trying to position SE as, is this tool that you can use for all sorts of claims. So if that's the focus of your show, then SE is probably a really good tool. And you don't have to be rigid about it. You don't have to go in a specific order or ask a level of confidence. It's really taking your ego out of it, making it about your conversation partner, helping them feel comfortable so that they can reveal their reasons for thinking something is true. And then you explore with them how they determine that those are good reasons for thinking something is true. And they're doing most of the work. It's just a matter of, I guess, maybe thinking of good questions to come up with and resisting the temptation to argue. Yeah. But if you can do all that stuff, it sounds easy, like just to lay it all out there. It takes practice. It's not easy to do, really. If you ever tried it, it could be a little challenging.
The first time I tried it, I pretty quickly, even without intending to, I realized I was asking like these leading questions, and like, that's not what you want to do at all. No. You want to leave it open for them to sort of take the wheel and guide the conversation.
Well, the problem I think we have is, like Anthony said, like you said, it's about your ego. We most of us enter a conversation with an agenda. We have a point of view that we want to get over on that other person. And it's hard to take a step back and just listen and be willing to hear that other person, and even be willing to leave the conversation not having convinced them, and just keeping the dialogue open, because I think that's the key that I have a trouble with. I feel like I've got to close the deal every time, and I don't.
Yeah, there seems like there's some pressure to make progress when...
Right.
If you think about it this way, like, you think that you're right about something, you likely think that they're wrong about something.
Exactly.
And it can get in the way of trying to convince people that they're wrong and that you're right. It's much easier and more productive to have them explain how they became convinced that they're correct.
Well, let me ask you this: is there a mental? I'm wondering about a mental exercise that could even be employed, even like drugs? Saying to myself, mental, not even not like medical. I'm not medical. Even like saying to myself, maybe I'm wrong about this. I'm pretty sure I'm right, but maybe I'm wrong, and to enter the conversation from that angle with those lenses on, is that even possible?
You can do that. Like, it's kind of hard to pretend that you're wrong about something when you're so sure you're right.
See, I don't know. See, that's what
you can't deceive yourself, but
it's almost game playing, isn't it?
Yeah, I found that you can easily reveal that you disagree with somebody and still not jeopardize the whole conversation. So a lot of it is how you are building rapport, and you're establishing trust. You're showing that you're listening to the person. And once you've built up a repository of rapport, essentially, you can start taking a few risks and sharing your position and saying, like, I had a conversation today with a childhood friend's mom. It's our 5th conversation. It's on Zoom. I'll probably start releasing them starting Thursday. it was clear by the end of it that she really wasn't all that convinced that she was mistaken in her view. But there was still value in the conversation because I think we still revealed a few things that these were arguments that she led with, but now she no longer does. So I still view that as progress, and she's willing to talk with me again. And that's how often do you talk with somebody about a deeply held belief where you think they're wrong and they think you're wrong, but you're still able to make progress and they're willing to keep the conversation going with you. That's my definition of success on a
that's
topic.
A testament to your ability to do this well, Anthony. And I got to tell folks, I mean, you remember the first time we met, Anthony?
Was it in San Antonio or was it?
Yeah. And I came to do a talk at it was at a little Mexican restaurant there. There were about 30 people there.
My son was there too.
You brought your son, and we had not met before. We had connected online, but we hadn't met. And so it was thrilling to meet you. And so we've got some callers. So we're going to get to them in a minute, but I just wanted to revisit that because I was so struck by something then. And it clued me in on the heart of this guy, Anthony Magnabosco, which I've always appreciated. I'm up there talking, telling my story, and I look over at you, and you've got tears streaming down your face.
I'm a pretty emotional guy sometimes.
And I thought, damn, I love this guy. and it just, he cries. He's tapped into his emotions. And I just, I think whatever it was about my story that moved you, and you told me afterwards that you'd brought your son because he was dealing with a fear of death and things like that. And my thing is talking about death and dying out loud. And I remember, I'll never forget that. And then I saw you maybe a month later at the Bat Cruise in Austin when you came over for that, and we hung out a little more. And I've just always enjoyed your company and the heart that you bring into it. And I think that's a testament to why you're so good at the Street Epistemology, because you genuinely care. You're not just trying to convince people. You're willing to have a conversation and to hear the other person. And that's so important.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. In addition to taking your ego out of it, you kind of have to put your emotion into it, or it's your compassion. It's helpful if you're compassionate about the person that you're speaking with.
Yes.
If you care about, and it's kind of hard to do with a stranger on the street, but still, I see people as walking around with beliefs that they likely just haven't really given much thought. So I give people a pass on the beliefs that they have. It's easy to separate the person from the belief that they hold.
Yeah.
Especially when you do
you're seeing them as a human. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so humanizing the person that you're speaking with is helpful. And people, of course, like to be viewed as a human, and they will usually do that in return. And then you can have an even better conversation. It's a little bit more challenging over, like a call-in show, because
speaking of call-in shows, let's take some calls. We've got some
calls.
We've got calls. We have choices. I see Captain Dadpool. Captain, hang on. We'll get to you in a minute. We got a guy.
That's a familiar name.
We got oh no, Atangelo. Come on. Seriously? From Brazil?
Okay. I take it you know this person?
Oh God, Atangelo, just chill. Maybe we'll get to you later. Bev, she, her from South Carolina, would like to ask Anthony how to speak with her family in a non-antagonistic way. That's what we're here for.
Yes.
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? Well,
let's see if we can get Bev on the line.
Let's bring her on. Yeah. For some reason,
hello?
Answering it.
Bev?
Hey. Hi.
Hi, Bev.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. You're on with Dave, Genevieve, and Anthony Magnabosco. Thank you for calling.
It right. Good for you.
I've been looking forward to this for so long.
Well, good.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Bev, I know who you are. Good to hear you, girl. So what would you like to ask Anthony?
I haven't told my family that I am an atheist, and I really don't know anybody in my area that is an atheist, but I don't like. I would like to let them know. I mean, I don't want to make some big proclamation or anything, but I feel like I'm not being totally authentic, because there's a lot of Christianity, and there's a lot of Beverly pray for this and pray for that. And I listened to you, Anthony, and you too, Dave. But Anthony, I was wondering, how can I speak with them and without being antagonistic or well, I'm not wanting to confront them, but what do you suggest would be the best way of going about this? I don't want to push them. I'm not trying to push anything on them. If you understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah, having conversations with loved ones seems to be a lot harder when it's these deeply held beliefs like gods and other claims. And it's a lot easier with strangers, I found. There's a lot more prep work that I think you have to do if you're attempting to gear up for a conversation with somebody. Maybe one of the first things you could try to do is ask yourself, what are you hoping to get out of the conversation?
That's good.
What would be a success for you? Would a success be them getting a basic understanding of what I mean when I say I'm an atheist and that's good enough? Or do I want them to understand what I specifically don't find convincing? Or do I want to go further and then question them about their views? You should probably have a heart-to-heart with yourself about what you're hoping to achieve. And then ask yourself if that's obtainable, because you may have had arguments in the past where you've butted heads. So you may have to do a little bridge building as well. The other thing too, I was thinking is that sometimes labels can be really confusing to people. So just starting with, hey, mom and dad, I want to let you know that I'm now an atheist. That word has a lot of baggage that you may not want to saddle them with right from the start. And maybe just talk in broad terms. Like, I've really started questioning my religious views, or I'm starting to doubt, I'm starting to wonder about these things. I'm maybe not quite as confident as I was 10 years ago about this stuff. And I love you and I want to share this with you. You can gently ease them into it, and you can then be gauging their reaction too. Are they getting upset? Are they threatening to take me out of their will? And then just try to adjust accordingly. What do you guys think?
Genevieve, your thoughts?
One of the first thoughts that I had was that, I get how difficult it is and also how painful it is to feel like you can't be authentic. I haven't really talked to my in-laws about this, but what I have tried to do over, the years since I've known them is just, love them, of course, and, show them how great I am, even though I haven't gone to church with them. And so in your position, what I might do before having that, personal conversation while you're talking about, your perspective is I would almost just want to ask them the general question. Do you think that you have to be a Christian or you have to believe in God to be a good person? And kind of find out where they stand on that. Because if they can admit, well, I guess perhaps you don't have to believe in God to be a good person, then that's when maybe you might be able to talk with them a little more openly about those doubts. And you don't have to come out and just say, oh, well, like, I'm an atheist, because that does have a lot of baggage. I've met Christians for whom I was the first atheist they met, and they, told me that they assumed all atheists were these like devil worshiping heathens who ate babies and, had no moral compass. And
Yeah.
And, I think if you can help them confront any sort of preconceived notions about atheism before, centering it on yourself, that could be helpful. I'm not sure, but that's what I would do.
So, Bev, if I understand right, you're wanting this to kind of be an introductory conversation. Your family doesn't know that you're an atheist, or you don't believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I think I just want to live authentically. I think that's really good, that not saying I'm an atheist. It does come with a lot of baggage.
Yeah,
I remember that from all those years of being evangelical and out in the ministry and all that stuff. And, perhaps something like I don't believe that some of these things. I don't know, something like that. But that's really good. That's really good to think about.
Yeah, that's good advice. Agnostic is a softer word. I call it the soft A and not the hard A. And I kind of tiptoed into the waters using the term agnostic. It simply means we don't know, which in reality none of us really do know. We have our best guesses and our opinions about things. But I love Anthony's advice in terms of asking yourself the question, first of all, what do you want to get out of it? What's your motivation for telling them? And for me personally, it was, like you already mentioned, Bev, I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to be who I was around around family members or friends. And so I felt compelled to tell them. Now, if I look back on it 10 years later or 12 years later, and I was a bit more blunt than I needed to be. But I just felt like I needed to let people in my life know that I no longer identified as a Christian. And I didn't want them thinking of me in one way when the truth was completely different. And so that was my motivation, is just to be authentic and honest. But I think Anthony has some great thoughts on how to prepare yourself beforehand so that you don't go into it with some kind of expectations that can blow up in your face.
And those are the things you can do to prepare yourself. There are probably some things that you can do to prepare your parents also. Like, think about the reactions that you may get. Like, a very common one is parents usually think that they let their children down, or they let God down by not.
Yeah.
Because
they failed them. They failed their kids.
They failed their kids. They failed God. And one thing that you can probably do to get ahead of it is to say, please don't, I hope that you please don't take this on yourselves as a failing on your part. This is something that I came up with on my own, I suppose, over the years.
Mm-hmm.
You've raised me well. I love you. I'm happy that I'm the person that you've raised me to be. However, I've grown since then. And please don't beat yourself up too much over my decision to go in this direction. And if you want, put the responsibility of converting me back on your God and not yourself. And that usually ends up taking a lot of pressure off of parents as well. So I'd recommend, not only think about what you need to do beforehand, but think about how you can sort of pave the way to make it a little bit easier for your parents, because it's probably not going to be easy.
Is it your parents, Bev,
Right.
you're thinking of, or your kids, or who are these conversations going to be with?
It'll ultimately be my parents, but my sister, she's a year younger than I am. And I was telling her that I had begun deconstructing what I had believed.
Mm-hmm.
And, because it never occurred to me, why do I believe the things that I believe? And it wasn't just about Christianity and everything. And I thought that she understood what I said, because she said, "That's great." And I don't think she understood it.
I don't think she understood the
all.
question.
Because she's been telling me a lot of things that indicate clearly she does not. And I have now, I've got the TikTok where everything that I have on there is pertaining to this
Stuff like my channel, right? And Genevieve's, right?
Yeah.
Well,
algorithm.
Yeah, it's tough. And, I try to remember that people that care about me, their reaction to my deconstruction being what it is just because, number one, they care about me. Number two, they're scared. They're afraid that if something like this can happen, they look at it as something that happened to me, which in essence it is. But they feel like if it can happen to Dave, who was a fervent believer all those years, it could happen to me, and my whole world could be rocked. And that makes them very afraid. It's a comfort zone issue, and we have to remember that.
Yeah.
Well, good luck, Bev. I appreciate the call. You were the very first caller on that GD show. That will go down in history.
Yay.
High honors.
Yes.
You take care, Bev. Let us know
Thank
let me know how
Thank
it
you
goes,
so much.
okay? You bet. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
The important thing, let me see I get this right. I got to drop the call. Okay. All right. Atangelo, we will get to you. Hang on. I don't know why I'll take this guy, but I will because he called in. And Captain Deadpool will get to you too, but we got others. We got calls, guys.
Yeah, I put out some tweets and some Facebook posts. If you have a Street Epistemology related question too, I'd be happy to take it.
Yeah, there's Gordon from California. He, him. His hobby is taking Mormons to breakfast.
What a great hobby.
Yeah.
He's atheist, lonely after COVID, and they don't leave. I'm not sure I understand that. We're going to take Gordon from California.
What's up, Gordon?
Gordon, are you there?
Yeah, hi.
Hey, Gordon.
Yeah.
Hi.
It isn't always. Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yes.
welcome to the show.
Oh, yeah, it's great to be here. Yeah, it isn't always breakfast. It's sometimes lunch as well. Yeah, and I'm not talking about McDonald's or, the cheap stuff. I take them to the mid-level restaurants. I take them someplace, fairly nice without being too over the top or ostentatious. So, and usually I ask them what sort of food they like to eat first. So it's been breakfast, it's been lunch as well. And the good part is, you see, they're not going to get up and walk out on you in the middle of the meal. You see what I'm saying?
They're hostages? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess so.
If the food's good, they're not going to leave,
Why do you
atheist.
pick?
Usually what
I'm
I
curious
do-
are you former LDS? Is there a reason why you only sit down with people from that church, or
No,
just a
I'm
convenience, or-
perfectly happy to do it with Jehovah's Witnesses or with Muslims or anyone else. And I'd like to branch out and sort of expand my horizons. And
what about
try,
evangelical Christians?
I would be happy to do that. And usually what happens when we make contact over the internet or the telephone first,
Mm-hmm.
I say that I'm genuinely interested in your point of view. And I am interested in their point of view. I want to know why they believe and what they believe and why they believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll generally get down to the conversation, which is very interesting. And first, after they tell me why they're Mormon or whatever, I don't say, well, I'm an atheist and I want to convince you that I'm right and you're wrong. I don't try to make this out to be a fight. What I will do is say how I became an atheist, what it was the first point in my life when I came to the conclusion that there really wasn't anything to organize religion. And then as the conversation progresses, what I try to help them do is understand that when they're talking to a person such as myself, what arguments can they make which are effective, and what arguments can they make which are ineffective? Because if they're talking to an atheist, there are certain things that they can say that I'm just going to dismiss out of hand and like, oh, I know how to refute this and I've heard it 1,000 times before. Or there are other arguments that, although it's not going to make me a theist, is going to cause me to at least wonder if there's some value or some insight that they may have, which may be worthwhile. So in other words, if it's a missionary, the missionary is trying to convert people to Jesus Christ and the Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, whatever. And I try to help them make those arguments stronger so they have some benefit of talking to me. Maybe they're not going to convert me, but maybe they'll understand the theology a little bit better and can be more effective when talking with an agnostic or an atheist. And it's also a very interesting thing because the first time I did this, I found out that their knowledge of theology was extremely limited. You know, you'd ask them about Christopher Hitchens or Richard Dawkins, and they'd never heard of the guy. You'd ask them about the Kalan cosmological argument or the ontological argument, and they're just confused. And I don't try to make them feel stupid for not knowing that, But on a very friendly way, I explain what these concepts are,
right,
and what the criticisms might be. And it's an interesting thing because generally it's, yes? I'm sorry, you going to ask a question?
Yeah, I was just curious if you had a comment or a question for Anthony along these lines.
Well, I think it works out very well to kind of meet them at their own level. One thing I've noticed with the Mormons is you'll always meet two of them. They travel in pairs, and sometime, and usually what you'll have is like there's the alpha male and there's the guy who kind of holds back, and sometimes you'll have you'll meet with sort of hostility, and other times they'll view it as an intellectual exercise, and really take an interest in the conversation. So it's the last time was Friday morning, and the alpha male ended up actually getting kind of upset with me, and so I invited them both back to the same restaurant, in a week's time, and I don't know if they'll come, but it's sort of like I said, look, if you show up, I'll be here. If you show up, that's great. If you don't.
Well, let me ask you this. Genevieve had a question. Go ahead, Genevieve.
Actually, no, I didn't have a question, but I did have a comment, is that what you just said about, the two Mormons traveling in pairs and one person definitely takes charge. It actually reminds me of a session that you did, Anthony, a little while ago. I don't know if you remember. I think you were at the college campus, and these two young Mormons came up, and you had a conversation, and there was one who kind of hung back, and then you did a follow-up video quite a while later, and it turns out that he had deconverted, and you guys had met up in a park, and he was talking about how he wasn't so sure, and then having that conversation and kind of sitting back and watching, he did realize that he didn't hold those beliefs.
It sounds like you might be conflating two videos, because I did talk with some Mormons, but I didn't have a follow-up conversation. But I did have a follow-up conversation with one guy.
Yeah.
You might be referring to Dan, maybe, I'm wondering. But I've had it's happened a couple times where, I'll have a conversation with somebody, we meet again, or they reach out to me later and say, can we talk? Because now I don't believe that that's true anymore. But with regards to you sitting down with people from the LDS Church, number one, I think it's great that you're doing it. I also like your idea of getting it out of the way. Like, here's the things that I'm going to find convincing. So please don't waste your time giving me Bible verses or whatever your parameters are. Laying that out there is efficient. It's an efficient use of all of your time, and it's going to probably avoid frustration. Because if they keep giving you things that you're not going to find convincing, it's just going to get them frustrated and you're frustrated. So working that out is awesome. Here's a risk, though, that I think we have to make sure that we keep in mind when we are engaging with people who are trying to push their view is, in addition to specifying what you would need to see to adopt their view, which I think is great, we run the risk of, in return, trying to give them things we think that they will find convincing. So like, oh, they're a Mormon, so they just need to hear about the rock in the hat type of thing because that's silly. But they probably have an apologetic for that, or they thought it through, or they were taught what answer to give. It's much more effective when you're engaging with somebody where you want to challenge what they're thinking is true, is to have them identify their reasons for thinking that it's true. And you may be very surprised. It may be a very basic apologetic. You might be disappointed that it wasn't something more difficult or more challenging, but that is what's propping up their belief, and that's the important thing to focus on.
Yeah, I two of a pair of them approached me in a park a while back, and I wasn't very Anthony Magnabosco like with them. They just came up. And I said, guys, you don't want to do this.
Oh, see, I get excited when I see, like, I want them to knock on my door. And
I
got the doorbell, but like I'll get my GoPro out and record it and sit down and do all that.
I wasn't in the mood for it that day, and I have
to be in the mood. And I think it's great that this caller is interested in doing that. Like, if more people took the time to sit down with religious evangelists about why they think this stuff is true.
Yeah,
They would,
good
people would probably
conversations.
stop sending them out because I think it would be so effective in helping them take another look at their views,
Mhm.
especially if you're being nice and respectful and tolerant of what they're saying, but still challenging. Don't let them, you don't have to agree to disagree. Like really challenge them with good questions, but do it respectfully.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, Gordon, thanks for the call. We got some other ones we need to take, but I appreciate you calling in and keep up the good work. When I was a Christian and I would evangelize, I always thought, I'm bringing souls that into heaven that I'll see in heaven. And now when we're deconverting people, it's just, we're going to see them in hell, right? Is that kind of how this goes? No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Thanks for the call, Gordon.
Yeah. Take
Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
Okay.
I've got so many videos out there. It's kind of neat. Like I've got videos with Jehovah's Witnesses and just evangelicals and atheists. And it's once you like this SE tool, you can use the same tool set regardless of the claim, because what you're doing is you're exploring the quality of their reasons and you're assessing with them how they determined how
you
to
could
weight
even
those
do
reasons.
it. You could even do it for people who want to cancel abortion, call abortion. I mean, Anthony, your state sucks. Fix your fucking state. Your
I
state is
know.
broken. Your
I heard
state is
Genevieve was there.
broken.
You were just out here, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I was there from Wednesday until yesterday.
God.
And, yeah, I did take a moment to go down to the Capitol, and I was hoping that there'd be people there protesting that I could join, but instead I just kind of walked into the Capitol building with all the other tourists and had
But I mean,
moments of angry silence.
You could use this approach in talking to them as well. Why do you believe abortion is wrong?
Yeah.
I mean,
In fact, I got one of those mailers from Ted Cruz, and
oh boy,
I'm on his emailing list.
Oh
I
boy,
want to see what he's putting out, and I replied back, I'd really like to sit down. Like, it seems like a lot of your views are religiously motivated, and if you have the time, I'd love to sit down with you and respectfully challenge why you think this is the case, because it seems to be influencing a lot of your decisions. Never heard back.
Please
but
video that.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Let's get him on the show. Show.
And something else that I find so interesting too is that, a lot of the people for whom religion is central to their political beliefs, they also are the first ones to, scream and shout in defense of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that, like, the very first thing that it says in the Bill of Rights is that we have freedom of religion. And so I think it's always interesting when you do get an opportunity to talk to somebody like that, who is like a very Christian, conservative, limited government, pro-life individual. But then it seems that they also tend to try to impose their own morality or their own religion on others.
And it's more frustrating too, because when you engage with them, like, I don't think Ted Cruz's reasons for thinking that his God is real is any better than what we might get from a caller or that I might meet on the street. And that's what's so frustrating about it, is that they're so sure that they're right. But when you explore the quality of their reasons, they don't live up to their own standards.
Yeah.
Yet they're making all these decisions based on this idea that this God is real.
Yeah, that's why these conversations are important in this country, because that's what's happening around us. So we got calls. Let's take a Tangelo against my better judgment. Captain Dadpool, if you're still watching, call back in. I see that your call, you hung up. We can call you back, or call back in and we'll take your call next.
Yeah, he said he had to hop off, but he just wanted to say congratulations
We'll
try.
I haven't met him yet. I know he's pretty
Atangelo. Atangelo from Brazil, him. Is that you
what
want
time
to?
Is it in Brazil right now?
Yeah.
Are you in Brazil, Atangelo?
Hello.
Yes, you said you want to perform SE on Anthony and the other host, me and Genevieve. How do they know that the natural world is all there is to be true? Correct?
No. Before we get into that, I'd like to understand what your definition of SE is. Can you define it or explain it to us?
Well, basically, I think it is about questioning if what someone believes, if there are good justifications to believe what someone believes. Probably is that probably right?
I think that's a good characterization of it. That's pretty much it. We ask questions. We want to reveal the backing that somebody has for thinking that their claim is true. And it's usually helpful to get a claim established. So Is there a claim that you think Genevieve and I are making, or what claim do you think we're making that you would like to use SE on?
No. I actually agree with the assessment that if we believe something, there should be good reasons to believe what we think is true. But I think that goes both ways. So you, Anthony, you question believers or theists about their faith, but I think that the burden of proof, it is for both sides. So if I don't know if you are a positive atheist, which positively believes that there is no God, or if you just disbelieve what theists
Wait a
say.
minute. That first of all, Tangelo, you are mischaracterizing what an atheist is. That the definition of an atheist is not someone who believes there's no God, is someone who doesn't believe in a God. Those are two big, vastly different statements.
So I might be the dissenter here on this one. I'm fine with either definition.
Okay, go with that then.
Yeah, because I know it's popular to say I lack a belief in God. When I look at my beliefs, and let me define what a belief is. A belief does not mean something that I think is true. I think a lot of people think that's what beliefs are. My beliefs, I actually wrote this down somewhere at one point. I may actually have it here. I wrote down, a belief is the personal awareness of a concept. The second that I become aware of an idea, I now have a belief about that idea.
That's good.
And I like to think about that belief or my position on it in terms of a scale of certainty, like from 0 to 100. When I think about my belief that there's a God, I look at the reasons that are out there, and none of them move me up to near 100. They consistently keep me down near like 0 or 1 or 2. They don't carry a lot of weight for me to move me up. So if I'll be fine saying that I have a belief about God, and my belief is that there's not enough evidence to really justify thinking that one exists.
So, Tangelo, what would be your response to Anthony's statement there, Tangelo?
Well, Dave, I very well know both positions of a weak and a strong atheist. So
okay.
The predominant assessment of atheists today is simply to say, oh, I am not convinced of the propositions and the claims which are made by theists. But I think that, as I said previously, I think that if someone believes that a God is not necessary, then that person has also the burden of proof to back up that assessment. And that's what I'm asking. How do you know, or based on what do you believe that God is not necessary?
Necessary for existence or something, or necessary?
Yes. All physical reality, origins, basically.
Oh.
If you say God is not necessary, so then basically what you need to do is to give good, positive explanations of how we can exist without a creator.
God is necessary. See, I don't think of it in those terms. I think of it whether the God exists or not. I don't think about contingencies or reality being contingent on an idea that something is true. I mean, I just look around. I'm experiencing reality. I start looking around my reality. I'm observing people say things about reality, and then I look to see what evidence they have to back it up. I don't think about that. I don't think about God in that way. Reality is. I don't think how reality can be necessary without a God. I look around and I'm experiencing reality.
Genevieve, what would you say to that?
Sense.
Oh, I would also say that
we all try to make sense. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I just think it's also important to sort of define specifically what you mean by God, because so many people have different ideas of what that God is. Do you mean that there's a God necessary for existence itself? Because, I would say that, we have at least no evidence that convinces me, for or against that argument. But some people take it a step further and say, oh, well, it's necessary that we don't just have a God that, like a deistic God that created the universe, but then we also have a God that interacts in our lives. Or people take that ontological argument and then take that to a specific religion or a specific God. And that's sort of the jump that I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm curious why, in your mind, you see it as, oh, well, for things to be as they are, it is necessary for there to be a God, because perhaps things are the way they are simply because they are. And I think it could be difficult to make a generalization one way or another, if that makes sense.
What is your definition of
Well,
God,
when I
Atangelo? Who is your God?
Yes, I am a Christian, but when I start a dialogue with an atheist, and I don't start with the Christian God, I make a cumulative argument where I define God as eternal, necessary, ultimate, intelligent, powerful. These are the attributes which I make. It's basically a minimal description of God. There is no logical contradiction here.
So
I'm kind of curious what starts first. Your definition of a God, or looking around for evidence and then discovering a God and then describing the attributes of this God that you've discovered. Are you coming up with attributes for your God, and then now you've got this God concept that you can find evidence to support? Or like at one point you were born, you started learning about your environment, you started learning English. At what point did it dawn on you that this God exists and he has all these attributes? Or did you back your way into it and say, well, in order for there to be reality, there had to be this and that and that? Or was there some other process? Like, I'm honestly curious how you formed your view that there's this entity in the first place.
Yes, I think that it is difficult to point out I was 7 or 8 or whatever age starting to think about the concept of God. But what we all try to do is to make sense of reality of the physical universe, where it came from. And I think that one very important distinction is that
Did we lose you? Atangelo?
I think
his
we
call
lost
dropped.
him.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I want to understand how he's forming this view, and because that's really, it's how did that belief get in there in the first place, and then what is this belief doing for you? What would your life be like without this belief? Are you then looking around and finding things that happen to match your belief, and therefore you give it more weight? Like, I'd really like to understand the genesis of this view.
I've had this conversation so many times on these kind of shows, and I know I think he's a guy that's called in a lot of them, or at least he's in the chat rooms lurking.
There is no call-in show that Otangelo has not called into.
Yeah. So I thought, we'll take it, but whatever.
Yeah, I'm new on the scene, so I don't have any preconceived notions of him, but I was really curious to kind of see where that goes, because like I said, one thing that fascinates me is when people go from these big, broad ideas that, a creator God is necessary,
right,
but then this specific religion is,
well, that's always the jump.
Is.
Yeah, they have to make that jump, and it's always the God that they happen to believe in. But I get bored with that conversation really quickly, because I've said it 100 times. To me, it doesn't matter how we got here. I mean, who created us, what created us, whatever. We can argue that all day long, and we do. And the end of the day, we don't really know. My bigger conversation for me is, where's that God involved now? What's he doing now? How is he helping us now? How is he preventing that child from being raped?
Mm-hmm.
How is he helping starving children in other countries who are starving simply because it doesn't rain enough in their land and they don't have enough clean water? What's that God doing for anyone anywhere? And that's the conversation that I want to have, because and usually when we frame it that way, there are no answers, because there is no evidence of a God doing anything for anyone anywhere. And so this constant argument about there has to be a creator for us to get here, and the world doesn't make sense unless something made it. I honestly, I just get tired of that so quickly.
Yeah. See, I get tired of it too, so I usually tend to skip it. Like I'm interested in SE. We're interested in how you concluded to a fairly high degree of confidence that something is true. Can you walk me through your reasoning? And
Right.
how did you assess the quality of those reasons that contribute to your confidence that this is true?
Well, it sounded like
all the other stuff is window dressing. That kind of, somebody was using the metaphor before of like branches on a tree. You know, we spend a lot of time whacking at the branches and the leaves when it's really the trunk and the roots that are more interesting. They're just like going to the restaurant and sitting down with the Mormons. You can talk about the doctrine, but it's far more productive to have them explain how they became so sure that it's true.
Well, I think he started in saying at the age of 7 or 8. So
I know, and then I lost it.
Okay, he's back. He's back. Yeah. But we're gonna let him sit a minute and think about Altangelo. Just go ahead and think about your response that you were about to say before you got dropped. We're going to take Gabe in Texas. I think this is Gabe Urbina, our graphic designer. He made our logo.
Gabe.
He's going to talk about separating the fundamental views of a church and the views of an individual in the church. Where do you start holding someone accountable for those views? Hello, Gabe.
Hey, Dave. How's it going, y'all?
Hey, buddy. Everyone, this is Gabe Urbina Design. He's the one that made the logo. That GD show. Very talented dude. Welcome to the show, Gabe.
Nice.
Thank you. I was wanting to talk to y'all about, well, Dave, you've mentioned it before, and you mentioned it earlier in the show about people about people.
Got some kids there
that are doing, yeah, he's getting a bath. But
bath time.
People actually treating you differently because they love you, because of their fundamental religion, a fundamentalist religion. I was born into a very fundamentalist religion, which is the Jehovah's Witness, that they teach about being open-minded to receiving their content and their message, but they also teach about shutting down, their members shutting down and being very close-minded about hearing a different view and actually pushing away from that. So in a religion that I grew up in, some family members have some very bigoted ideas as far as LGBTQ community. And I actually have a nephew that came out as gay and has had a lot of pain because of the shunning and everything that's taught in that religion. So how do you go about saying that they're trying to apply what they learned and feel that they're loving somebody by shunning them versus holding them accountable for having those views?
I'm curious to hear what Anthony has to say about this.
See, I was hoping that you would go first because I was having trouble following it.
Well, I think I know what here. Let me jump, since you guys are both deferring. I'll jump in. So I think
clear it up for us, Dave.
I think what you're saying, Gabe, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I've used this phrase to people: "You are better than your theology." And by that I mean that I know people who are good people who are locked in a bad theology. And for instance, use the LGBTQ issue. There may be people, and I remember feeling this way when I was an evangelical. Our theology said that it was wrong, it was sinful for a man to be with a man, so on, because we made it out to that the Bible said that. So we had this theology that put us in a position of having to look at them in a different way than we wanted to. I wanted to be compassionate and accepting, but my theology wouldn't let me. Is that kind of what you're saying, Gabe?
Kind of. I'm not gonna call anybody out on it or anything, but there's some family members, not all, but some family members that are very not accepting and have actually been in the religion for decades. So it's really in them to have these feelings of shutting down and not hearing any other perspective, even though that's what they expect of everyone else that they talk to.
Mhm.
So the teachings have their ways of making people think and feel a certain way.
Mhm.
So they feel anger and hate towards the actions or what they call choices of people, even though we know that it's not a choice.
Yeah.
But as far as and it even hurts them. It not only hurts the person being shunned, it hurts them to shun the person. But their beliefs or the teachings are so strong in them that they can't stray away, because for them, Jehovah is number one before anything else, before life, before family, before anything.
Yeah.
You know, you have to give everything up. And at what point I've tried to have these conversations, but it's the same thing about shutting down rather than being open to discuss something.
Yeah.
And at what point do I say, hey, you know what? I can't really hold this person accountable because this is what they've learned for decades and decades, or this person is just a closed-minded person altogether.
Yeah. Well,
and it's not so much the religion.
So I think I just
Because
have to
not
say that
all religions are like that.
yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, look at Christianity. There's such a broad spectrum of, people who are very progressive Christians who are open and accepting and see Jesus as this, radical revolutionary who accepted everybody. And others who are, have a lot in common with, extremist, Islamist extremists and stuff. I do want to say, though, is that, you can acknowledge that somebody might be a good person who is indoctrinated and who strongly holds beliefs that are damaging to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, you can kind of see that individual who is shunning, because like you said, it hurts them too. You can see them sort of as a victim, but you can also see them as somebody who you don't want to enable and you don't necessarily need to have in your life, or particularly in the life of your family member who is going through this trauma. I think that it's possible to recognize that, they might be a good person. They might be somebody who you love and you care about, but because of their religion, they think ultimately they're coming from a good place. They are doing what they think is right, and they might be misguided, and you don't have to condone that, and you don't necessarily need to have them in your life if their beliefs become that damaging and that toxic. You can have empathy and compassion and also not tolerate the behavior more than you have to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you can always set those boundaries. Are you looking for advice on how to reach people like that, or are you looking for advice on how to manage life with those people in it? I'm kind of curious, or something else.
A little bit of both, because I really wish I would have applied SE when I first started having these conversations. Because
it's not too late. You can still do, honestly, you can still do SE even though you may burn bridges. You just have to rebuild some bridges before you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I my deconstruction started coming on my own. I started thinking about things in my early to mid 30s, and then I'm 43 now, and everything started falling, in place, and I started going down the rabbit trail of YouTube videos, and it just kind of shot me into the direction of
unraveled. It unraveled. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe they'll discover videos. Maybe you can be the change that happens in their life. One suggestion I've given in the past for people that are really dug in on religious views is to not even engage with them on other claims that they make that are safer, that are not about the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Bible or anything like that, where they may make a claim, or the two of you even overhear somebody make a completely different claim unrelated to religion. And you can essentially walk them through the SE process. Like, I wonder why that person thinks that. What do you think their biggest reason is? What would change their mind? I wonder how they confirm that that's a good reason. You can be teaching them how to do this so that maybe they'll start to do it on their own claims, including those big ones, because they haven't seen, like, a lot of times I think people, they haven't been given permission, or they haven't given themselves permission to question, to wonder, to doubt, because it's been so stigmatized, especially in a religion like that. And you really kind of have to build up, you have to teach them how to think carefully. And you can do it with much safer claims, with much safer beliefs. And then maybe once they start to realize your technique and your approach, maybe they'll start doing it on those bigger ones. But it's not going to be quick. It's going to be slow and difficult.
Yeah. There's one instance that my fiance Lauren and I actually started kind of doing SE and just asking questions. And once the questions started stumbling dispersing, as far as not being able to answer clearly, it started getting a little bit heated and more defensive and combative.
This was with your spouse?
And I had to...
Was this with your spouse or somebody else? Was this with your spouse or your friend?
No. No, my fiance and I were asking the questions, and it started getting a little heated, and so to me, it makes me feel like rather than getting somewhere with the conversation, it feels like it's going to be more of that. If the answers, like, if there's anything that starts kind of making doubt or causing doubt, it's going to be more defensiveness and combativeness and that kind of stuff rather than progression. So, I mean, I would rather have progression, we both would, but there's certain things that with the religion that keep anything from moving forward, because anything that has to do with questioning is forbidden, even if it, not so much just atheism, but any other religion that comes along or anything else. It's you can't pay attention. You can't listen to anybody else. Everybody else needs to listen to you and bring you.
And that's the point. That's
like that. But when it comes to the other way around.
Yeah, that's the point of Anthony was saying. The defenses are up when it comes to that, as you know from having been in it, that you can't allow another opinion to come in. You're locked into your position. So you've got to continue to remember that they're sitting in that place. That's where they're sitting. And to approach them with anything that's going to feel challenging to them is going to double down on their defensiveness. And so Anthony's advice, and is great, is the whole SE method is get them questioning other things in conversations with them. Stay away from the things that are going to get their defenses up, and get them to thinking along the lines of, why do I believe a certain thing? Why do people believe certain things? What's their belief based upon? And then you can kind of move in the back door. And as he said, if you've got bridges burned, just rebuild them. It's a long process. And if they're in your life, and that's the key of whether or not you can, like Genevieve was saying, we don't have to have certain people in our lives if they're toxic in these areas that are important. If their toxicity is harmful to people, I don't have room for that in my life. And that may include family members. It depends on how bad it is. But once I've let that be known, and here's where I stand on that, if you're going to condemn gay people, and I have gay friends, then we're not going to have much to talk about. And I'm not going to entertain that and be a party to that. So, but if they're in your life and you can't extract them from it, then you got to look for ways to build some bridges and to find some ways to make those conversations meaningful.
Yeah, it's important to think about what's your ideal outcome and what's a realistic outcome. What do you want from this relationship, and what do you think you could achieve, and how could you achieve that? There's a lot of pros and cons, and it's all kind of a mystery. You never really know how people will react, or what will resonate with them, or if it's possible for them to change their beliefs. And if they won't, you have to think, is that somebody that I want to have in my life.
Right.
And there's no right or wrong answers. Life's tricky.
It is. Did that help, Gabe?
Well, thank you guys.
Okay, bud.
Yes,
Thanks for
it
calling.
helped out a lot.
Thank you.
Anthony, I just recently watched one of your videos, and the guy that you were talking to looked very familiar. And in the follow-up video, I just realized, holy shit, that's objectively Dan. So I enjoyed that quite a bit. I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, it's funny. I get messages on YouTube when somebody comments, not all the time, but for some reason so many times I get messages from YouTube comments like, I think that's objectively Dan. Is that objectively Dan? And I usually go and say, yep, that's him. Check out his show.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, guys. That helped out a lot, and it was great talking to y'all. I'm glad
Thanks,
you
Gabe.
enjoyed the logo.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks for everything, Gabe. Appreciate it.
All right, we had another call, but I think he dropped. I'm gonna try to get him back.
Yeah.
You know, can I wanted to add one more thing to that. Like,
Sure.
as far as advice to talking with people who they seem impenetrable, is to, in addition to setting aside the big claims and getting into simpler claims, another thing that you can do is go really broad, meaning you can have, if they're willing to talk with you,
Mhm.
you can have discussions about what it means to have evidence, like what makes evidence good or worthy, or what are the benefits of changing your mind? Like, is it really a good idea to be convicted in a belief, or is it advantageous to be a little bit flexible about the beliefs that we have? Those types of things. You can start thinking about the beliefs that we're forming and talking about that process.
Mhm.
That could be a really good entry point, because in the process of explaining how they would answer some of those questions, they may bring up their own belief in the process of explaining it. And now you're obliquely talking about the religious belief, but through the lens of this broader idea.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've always said that certainty kills. What I hate in any conversation is certainty,
Mhm.
because that stops the conversation and that kills curiosity, and it ends things. As long as we can maintain a position that I may be wrong. Here's what I believe or think now, but I may be wrong.
Mm-hmm. And that's, something that I've really loved about, watching you, Anthony, do SE is that, you might have biases, like you might have a position, but to properly engage in street epistemology, you do have to both put that aside and then be open to changing your own beliefs. Like, I think that certainty, when like with most things, like absolute certainty, it can close you off and really limit the intellectual growth that you can make yourself.
Although I did discover in a conversation, because I was convinced, people ask me all the time, well, when have you changed your mind on these views? And one thing that I think I've softened on, I used to always think that there was a relationship between conviction and being closed-minded.
Right.
As opposed to, were you about to take another caller? You want to get to that? Let me finish the point.
Yeah, finish your thought. I think we got one on, but
I've always thought that there was this relationship between being closed-minded and absolute certainty. And I do think that a person could be certain and absolutely sure something is true and still be willing to change your mind on it. Like, think about evolution for us. We would probably put ourselves really high on our confidence that that's true. However, we're probably not that closed-minded on that topic. I would imagine we're probably open to the idea that that maybe it's not true, or hey, maybe it could be shown that we're mistaken on this thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we got Rory back on the line. She/her from Wisconsin.
Hey, Rory.
Nope, I think we lost him again. She wanted to ask Anthony what he believes. Rory, you there? No. Oh shit. If you're there, call back.
When I get that question, usually it's from somebody who thinks atheists are saying that they have no beliefs or something like that. And I have lots of beliefs. I believe I'm on a show right now with Dave and Genevieve. Like, I believe Genevieve has a TikTok channel. Now, my degree.
But are you certain?
No, I'm not certain. But after the show, I'm going to go and probably follow her on TikTok. And
you
my
should.
certainty will increase, accordingly. Yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, I think, I don't know what their idea was, what you believe. The comment says, would like to ask Anthony what beliefs he has. In other words, reverse SE was in the parentheses.
Okay, here's the big secret of street epistemology. I kind of hinted about it earlier.
You're going to give us secrets?
These
Woo!
are secrets. These are the big secrets. Well, we're developing this course on SE, and I was telling you before the show, I could have had 1,000 conversations and not have grown in my understanding of SE than I have over the last year of developing this course. The big secret is that the claim or the belief doesn't matter. You can still use SE. In SE, yes, you need to know what the claim is and about approximately how sure the person is that it's true, but it's the reasoning process that you're evaluating with them. How did you come to conclude that these reasons justify a high degree of confidence for thinking that this claim or other claims that use similar reasonings, how did you get there?
Yeah.
So you can use these questions on any claim. It doesn't matter the belief. So it's kind of tempting to put this course out and not even worry about the identification of the claim, although that's important.
So when will this course be out? You keep teasing us with.
I keep teasing it. I know. Well, it's complicated. We hit these little stopping points where we need to have these side-off conversations. But there's 22 modules. One of the 22, that's module 7. It's called Building and Maintaining Rapport. That's available now for people to beta test. It's about 30 pages long. And if each module is 30 pages long times 22, we're talking about a really big thing.
Yeah.
But we're hoping to have modules 1 through 7. Module 1 is what is street epistemology. Module 2 is why use street epistemology. Module 3 is a street epistemology overview. Module 4 is preparing to do SE. Module 5 is having the right attitude. Module 6 is ethical considerations. Module 7 is building and maintaining rapport. We hope to have that done and public by the end of this year.
Okay.
So people will be able to take this self-directed course. Maybe we'll take a little bit of a breather, bring more people on our team, hopefully, and then maybe get the rest of the remaining modules out before the end of next year.
Yeah.
Wow.
So tonight's the first that I'm hearing about this, and I am so excited because, SE it's very difficult. It's more difficult than you would think.
We're spending a lot of time on the stuff that happens, the stuff that you need to be aware of before you even start the conversation.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it, and maybe we're making it more difficult than it needs to be, but we're trying to cover all the bases because we want the course to basically supplant everything that's been released to date. We want it to be the latest and greatest.
You say you have a team. Now tell me what that means.
We have an amazing team. So I'm the executive director of a nonprofit for street epistemology.
Okay.
And we put out a call for people familiar with the method to help us write this course. We have a guy in Australia, Russia. We have folks in the project managers from Canada, people from all the United States.
Wow.
People from around the world are volunteering to help us with this. We're reaching the point now where we need to start paying people for certain expertise, a lead designer, an illustrator, that type of stuff. But it's definitely a group effort.
Now, are you? It's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So we're going to have your links in the
I'll send them to
show
you.
notes or something. Yeah, we need to make sure people know how to get to you and support that. The work you're doing, we're gonna wrap up. Altangelo's still hanging out. Altangelo, dude, we love you, but you kind of wear us out, man. And so I think we covered your comment tonight, and we can move on. But hang on there. But best to you, Altangelo. But we're gonna move on. I want to wrap up and make sure we don't run out of time because we're very, very strict about our hour-and-a-half limit. But Anthony, you're going to put out your links and stuff. Make sure we've got the information, the nonprofit, so that you can get support.
Will do.
Support this guy, folks. He's doing amazing work, important work, really helping people. And we were going to be speaking at a conference coming up, and it looks like that. I don't think that's official yet, but I think they're making it official tonight. But we're postponing it to next year.
Yeah.
And so I was looking forward to hanging out with you a little bit.
Same.
We'll have another one sometime, I'm sure. And did I also hear from a little birdie that you're writing a book?
I haven't started it. It's just a concept at the moment, but I'm kind of tied up with the course at the present time. But I'm hoping that maybe we can get done with it by the end of this. Well, it's not going to be to the end of next year. Maybe in 2023. I do want to write a book. Yeah.
Good. You should.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
You got a lot there, man.
Yeah.
Anthony, you are one of the good guys, man.
You are too, Dave.
I appreciate
it was nice
that.
to meet you too, Genevieve.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's really nice to meet you. I'm low key geeking out this whole time. Yeah, big fan of your work.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Glad to hear it.
And so your information will be in the notes, in the show notes, in the chat. Our wonderful team, our moderators and call screeners. You guys just rocked it tonight. Our first show. I mean, I expected all kinds of glitches and issues, and I don't think we had any.
pretty smooth sailing.
Yeah, it speaks to having a good team behind the scenes. Ethan, Micheal,
Yes.
you are a rock star, dude.
100%.
You are a rock star.
Oh my gosh.
Cynthia McDonald, she put the video together, the intro and the outro, that rockin' jazz fusion music. What kind of style is that, Genevieve? I don't even know.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I wouldn't know what to say. I think you pretty much covered it, but I know there's gonna be some big music heads that are gonna say, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
that's clearly like retro prog funk jazz or like something. Yeah.
Please subscribe to the show, my YouTube channel. Let's build up this channel. Let's get the audience out there. If you can, I would love to have you as a Patreon supporter. There's links to that in the show notes and in the chat at the end of the show. Dying Out Loud. Follow me anywhere you can. Follow Genevieve's TikTok.
Yes.
She's just rocking that thing over there. And
thanks, man.
Just sharp. I love Genevieve. She's doing good stuff too.
Wow. Love you too, Dave.
Yeah. And anything else, Anthony? Tell us anything else.
I'm curious who your next guest is, because I want to watch your show next week. Or
well,
is it weekly? Is it a weekly thing?
It's weekly. I mean, we're diving in, man. We're going all in on this thing. So let me give you the rundown. Next week is Matt Dillahunty. The week after that is Seth Andrews.
Great.
The week after that is Dr. Daryl Ray. And that gets us through September. In October, we have Anthony Seidel coming up. Seidel, I said it wrong. I'm sorry.
Anthony. What's his
who? Not Anthony. Jesus.
Andrew
Seidel.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Seidel. Andrew Seidel. I'm really interested to talk to him about. He's all over this law that Texas passed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, insights on that.
Yeah,
he's really knowledgeable.
He's really sharp about. Well, it's constitutional law. That's his thing. Who else do we have coming up, Genevieve? Some other people.
In November, we've got Forrest Valkai, renegade science teacher, which I'm very excited about. He is such an enthusiastic science communicator, evolutionary biologist. When he followed me back on TikTok,
you geeked out, didn't you?
Yeah, a little bit. But that's how it's been from the beginning. One of my first followers was Captain Dadpool, and then you and I were, chatting on the phone a couple.
That's encouraging that's happening on TikTok too, because I've noticed that happening on Facebook and of course YouTube and Twitter. We seem to support each other in this effort. And if that's happening on TikTok, I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, I've been very thrilled. Yeah, I was a reluctant TikTok person myself, but I've been very thrilled with.
I thought I encouraged you to get on TikTok. Did I mention TikTok to you?
You did. Several people did.
Okay.
Bevan did. Yeah, a lot of people did, and I said I thought.
I thought I introduced you. Then I went to your TikTok and I saw that you had like 10 or 20 of them. The day after I suggested that you were on TikTok. So
no, I didn't.
Maybe he was on there a little bit longer than I.
I don't make that many. I'm very negligent in that.
Yeah.
Oh, also coming up, a great conversation we're going to have. A friend of mine named Steve Slocum. He wrote a book called "Why Do They Hate Us?" and it has to do with the Christian-Muslim issues going on. The Muslim, and I want to. It's an interesting conversation with him after the fall of Afghanistan. So these are the kind of conversations we want to have on this show, the topics that are beyond the belief systems, things that are going on in the world that we can look at through. It's going to be through a secular lens because that's who we are. But it has to do with all the things that are going on in the world that affect us. And so, yeah, that's who we are. That's what we're doing. And we're thankful that you guys tuned in every week. Monday night, 7:00 Eastern, 6:00 Central. Anthony, thank you, buddy. It was great. You were awesome, as we knew you'd be.
You're
Yeah.
both great.
I'm glad we
so
got
much.
calls. I didn't know if we get any calls for a show, so
I'm
I'm
glad we got some. That was great.
I'm thrilled.
Me too.
Genevieve, thank you so much.
Dave,
Everybody,
thank you.
see you next week.